So today we are making a vegan chocolate cake, and it's really easy, and even if you're not vegan, it's a good cake. If you're afraid of baking, don't be. I'll show you why.
I'm afraid of vegans.
No, you really aren't. Anyway, the reason that we're making it is, you know, I do like to have some vegan items for friends that are vegan, but also it's a really tasty cake. It's lower calorie, and as I said last time, you know, if you're keeping an eye out for the calories, it's considerably lower calorie than a regular cake, but it's got this really fudgy, dense, almost brownie-like quality to it that makes it seem decadent when it really isn't. So let's just get on it, shall we? So I'm preheating the oven to 350 Fahrenheit, which is about 180 Celsius, give or take. And when you're baking, well, certainly for this cake, and this is often true of other things, when you're baking, you have dry ingredients and wet ingredients, and you mix all the wet together, you mix all the dry together, and then you combine them.
The twain shall meet.
You can, you know, this doesn't have eggs in it, obviously, because it's vegan. That's a separate issue, but you can overmix your cakes, breads, whatever it is that you're making, maybe not breads, but cakes and pies and things, pastry, whatnot. You can overwork them, develop the gluten in the flour. You don't want to do that. But that only happens once the wet and the dry come together. You can mix your wet as much as you want. You can mix your dry as much as you want. It's when you put them together, you just barely mix them and then you pop them in the oven. It's about the moisture and whatever you're leavening with, in this case, baking soda. Okay, so let's just get on this because it's super easy, and I want to show you also.
Okay.
I did want to say I have lightly greased. This is a 9-inch cake tin.
What's your grease of choice?
This one
Not
happens
butter,
to be coconut oil. Sometimes it's sunflower oil. Don't go for olive oil in this case unless you really want. Actually, I'm not sure the flavor of olive oil would come through there, but it could. So I would do something a little more neutral. You can use an 8 or a 9-inch pan. You can use a square or a round one. Doesn't matter, okay? In this particular case, it does sometimes matter. So we're gonna take flour. This is white flour. The original recipe that I took, that I adapted this recipe from, used either white or spelt flour. So apparently you can sub in the spelt for that, but I haven't done it. Then we've got some granulated sugar. It's just going in there. Then we have cocoa. In this case, it does not matter if you're using Dutch processed cocoa or just regular old plain cocoa. You'll see those sometimes noted on a cocoa. There are times where it makes a difference. This time it does not make a difference. So use whatever cocoa powder you have. And that's just cocoa powder. That's not sweetened. We're not talking about like a chocolate milk mix or hot
Nestle's
cocoa mix.
Quick.
No. This is part of my adaptation. The original recipe doesn't call for this. Whenever I make something with chocolate in it, in this case cocoa, I like to add a smidge of coffee and make sure there's salt in there as well, because those two ingredients, while you don't taste them in the cake, make all the difference to how the cake tastes. It makes it taste better. There's something you won't taste the coffee. It doesn't taste like a coffee flavored cake at all, but it makes a difference to the chocolate. So that's a half teaspoon of that. Then baking soda.
Baking soda.
Soda, not powder. And salt. Fine salt. And I'm just going to give that a mix. I'm not having you sift it. Sifting, there are a couple of reasons for sifting. So if you've seen in a recipe and you're like, oh, I'm not sure why I have to do that. One of the reasons is, you know, if you have bugs in there, I'm serious, Rob.
Yeah, I know.
In the old days, that was one of the main reasons why that was done. It also, if your recipe calls for measuring after something's been sifted, well, the measurement's going to be quite a bit different because you have incorporated air in it. And basically, though, you're just getting out lumps. Okay, so that is my powder mix there. It's just completely mixed where it's all
lovely.
one color. Then we're going over to
Moistureland.
That's right, Moistureland.
We're going on vacation.
Now this is unusual. Cakes rarely call for water. This one does. Next we have some yogurt. Now, I said this is vegan. The original recipe calls for a vegan yogurt, and this happens to be, because what we have today is a dairy yogurt, so this particular version that I'm making is not going to be vegan.
But if you have vegan yogurt, the volume's the same and
It
everything?
is. Just go ahead and use your vegan yogurt. And if you're interested in me doing a video on my Koyo, which is my coconut yogurt, which is a vegan yogurt, then leave me a message down below asking for it, and I can see if there's an interest, and I will do a video on my coconut yogurt. But we're not doing that today, so we happen to have dairy yogurt in the fridge, so I'm using that.
Got it, girl.
Then we have, that's vanilla extract.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the original recipe that I took this from, the blog is called Chocolate Covered Katie, and I'll link to the original below. She is a young dessertophile. She really likes her sweets. I mean, her blog's called Chocolate Covered Katie. She loves her sweets, but she wanted to make them healthier. And so she adapts recipes all the time and makes healthy treats that tend to be lower calorie, but still taste really good. And you can certainly go find all sorts of things on her site.
So what's that?
So this is tahini. Her recipe calls for almond butter or peanut butter or whatever nut butter you happen to have. I really like tahini. It's something we always have around. The first time I made this cake, I did make it with almond butter. Today I'm making it with tahini. Same measurements, should all be good. So I'm just gonna put that in there.
So
And also, I think I said
oil
before
too, right?
that tahini and chocolate are a really nice combination. The sesame chocolate thing. So that's another reason. When I made it with the almond butter, the almond flavor was not very strong. I don't know if the tahini will be. We'll find out. Sorry, Rob, you were saying?
Oh, I think that adds a certain amount of fat to it as well, right?
Yeah, so that's where the fat is coming from. Instead of adding oil or butter here, well, obviously not butter if it's vegan, but any kind of fat like that, the same eggs have, the yolks have a lot of fat in them. I'm just making sure that there are no lumps here, because once we put this in there, we're not going to be mixing it very much. Anyway,
Moment of truth.
so yes, the fat in this recipe is coming from whatever nut or seed butter you use, and that makes it a pretty healthy fat for starters, and usually includes a lot of fiber as well. Tahini and peanut butter, almond butter all have fiber in them, whereas if you were using sunflower oil or something like that in a typical recipe where you'd be using melted butter or oil, it's straight up fat. There is no other value other than the fat calories in that ingredient. So by using a nut butter, you're adding a bit of flavor and depth, but you're also adding fiber, not just fat. So
Moving on.
we're just gonna put that in there.
Well, that's just so darn difficult.
Right? Like, is it hard to bake a cake? Do you need a cake mix? Really, you don't. In fact, a cake mix often requires you add the oil and the egg anyway. So as far as I'm concerned, this is almost like a mix.
So you're not beating it up, you're just combining it.
Yeah, I'm kind
Folding
of
it?
doing the folding. You don't have to fold, but I am kind of doing the folding method where I'm getting down under, because you don't want to have dried stuff down at the bottom there.
You don't want to have to fold it.
And getting also the sides. And I'm just gonna bring it together. We're almost there, just so that you don't see any
Specks?
dry bits.
Well, that's a technique in and of itself.
There you go. No dry bits. So
No bad days, no dry bits.
I'm just going to scoop it into the lightly greased pan. And then we're going to pop it in the oven for approximately 25 minutes. And this is a cake that you want to take out, err on the side of a little, not a lot, just a little underdone. First of all, there are no raw eggs or anything in there for you to be worried about, oh, is that going to, you know, am I going to get sick? Not that these days that's a huge issue, but you don't have to worry about that. But also, this cake, I should have started with this, and I certainly will write it down below. This cake is best made the day before, There's something about it sitting overnight that, I don't know, it gets that much fudgier and fabulous. But you don't want to overbake it is where I was going with slightly underbake it, and I'll show you what I mean by that when we come back. But yes, if you can make it the day before, all the better. So when I made this, I made it for a birthday, I made it the day before, and I actually did end up frosting it and things, but it does not need that. It is fudgy and brownie-like and doesn't need really anything at all. But I will put some options down below for what you can do. You can cut it horizontally and put some filling in. You can do all sorts of things. Anyway, I'm gonna put this into the oven and we'll come back when it's ready to come back out. So it's been 25 minutes and we're gonna go have a look at this cake here. Smells great.
Nice.
Now I've got, you can use a toothpick or a bamboo skewer, or I've got a metal skewer here that I'm gonna use, and you put it sort of in the middle of the cake and you pull it out. And you can see there's a teeny bit of stuff attached, but really not much. If there's a crumb or two, if it's a little sticky, that's fine because we're erring on the side of slightly undercooked here. But if you put that thing in there and you bring it out and it's covered in gooey chocolateness, then I would say you need to, your oven's a little cooler and you need to bake it a little longer. So there we go for that. Now I've just put it on something to cool here, and I'm gonna run a knife around the outside. You can also wait and do that once it cools, but I just wanted to show you doing that. There we go. All the way around. It smells fabulous. Mm-hmm. When it's cool, I'm going to just tip it out. It'll fall right out of there because we greased it, and I had no problem with it the last time I made it at all. Then, how can you finish it? How do you serve it? Like I said, it's really good. It doesn't look like much like this, but it'll taste great.
Can you eat it hot?
You can, but I wouldn't. Like I said, I actually think, and the original poster also said this, that tomorrow. It'll taste better tomorrow. It's interesting, I'm almost smelling peanut butter coming off of that, even though I know I put tahini in. It's almost like a Reese's cup kind of smell. Anyway, so if it was square, you could cut it in squares like brownies. This, I'll probably do wedges. And what you can do is you can cut it horizontally. This is what I did last time, so that you have two layers of cake. Then I took some berries and I mixed them. I put strawberries with a bit of sugar and I put it aside for, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours. That's called macerating berries. And what it does is the sugar kind of brings the juices out of the strawberry and blends with them and creates a kind of syrup. And you can't rush that process. Cooking it doesn't quite do the same thing. Then I put both the juice and the strawberries in the middle, and then I put the layer back on top. And I frosted it with a mixture of cocoa, maple syrup, and almond butter. In this case, tahini you could use, or like I said, we thought when we had it that the frosting was overkill. So another thing that you could do here is you could just dust the top with icing sugar. That would be very pretty. What else could you do? You could, well, I like the idea of berries or something in the middle. So I will leave more options down below of things that you can do to spruce it up if you think this is too plain. But it really is very good all by itself. So there you have it. You can bake. It really is not a big deal. Less than, like, why buy a, you know her name, cake mix? Like, absolutely unnecessary. Make your own. You can do this. See you then.